Chapter 23-27. Until the horse carriage's shadow completely disappeared from everyone's eyes. Yan Xiaoyi then waved her hand and asked everyone to return to devil class. There were some students who weren't willing to leave. Thinking of Yi Qingluo bringing Kitty Li along to search for the Miaogu family, they were extremely worried. The rumors of the Miaogu family, they had more or less heard of it. Although Yi Qingluo's ability was strong. But she totally didn't know anything about gu poison. Those people from the Miaogu family especially hated outsiders. If those people poison Yi Qingluo, then what should they do? Once she entered the Miaogu family, there was no way to escape unscathed. Since Qingluo has gone, we must believe in Qingluo. Even if we are worried, even if we want to follow up to help Qingluo, then we have to consider our own abilities. If we follow, we will only drag Qingluo down. Or worse, it will only cause more trouble for Qingluo. Yan Xiaoyi saw everyone's worried eyes and stopped her footsteps as she crossed her arms and looked calmly at the crowd in devil class. Just like what Qingluo said, we ourselves are already very strong. But in the past, with Qingluo around, no matter what we do, we have no fear because Qingluo will definitely create a miracle for us. Yan Xiaoyi's indifferent tone, however, made the hearts of the youths in devil class tremble. That's right. They were too reliant on Yi Qingluo in the past. As long as Yi Qingluo was around, they had never thought that they would fail. Just like what Yi Qingluo said before she left. They had enough power to protect themselves, to protect those people whom they cared about. But they had always been reliant on Qingluo. Reliant on Qingluo to make all the arrangements for their future. But if in future this dependence became a habit, once Yi Qingluo was not around, they would become a pile of loose sand. Indeed, this time Yi Qingluo's departure. It was the first step towards independence. To chase up to Yi Qingluo's footsteps, they must work harder to improve themselves. The youngsters' eyes were filled with determination as they clenched their fists. We understand. We will definitely be independent. When Madame Qingluo returns, let her see our transformation. West Continent and North Continent were connected, and if they hurried on horseback, they would be able to reach North Continent in 4 to 5 days. As for Yi Qingluo and the other two, after driving the carriage away from the crowd, they found a quiet place and summoned their respective war pets. Jun Qingwu's battle pet was just like her, a white crane the size of a horse. The grade of the white crane made Yi Qingluo slightly astonished for a while. That was an immortal crane, a low-level holy beast. Jun Qingwu's identity was obviously not simple. When summoned, the red-crowned crane raised its noble head proudly. Its long neck was surrounded by circles of ocean blue feathers. When it saw Yi Qingluo, the red-crowned crane spread its wings and flapped a few times. It seemed to be showing off its pure white feathers and its slender legs. Yi Qingluo thought that the crane thought she was too beautiful, so it was jealous? Yi Qingluo's consciousness drifted into her pet space. The two sacred beasts that had consumed the returning heaven nether yuan pill were still in a deep slumber. Yi Qingluo then summoned Shiju out. Under Yi Qingluo's nurturing, Shiju's body was extremely sturdy and its entire body was covered in black fur, which was shiny black. The red-crowned crane arrogantly turned its head to the side, showing its disdain for the low-level mirage beast. Chapter 23-28. The red-crowned crane originally wanted to show off its sacred beast's ability in front of the low-leveled mirage beasts. It intentionally spread its wings right from the start, and with a swoosh, it flew out. That speed was as fast as lightning, and in a blink of an eye, it had already disappeared. Yi Qingluo rubbed Shiju's head. Be good, don't lower yourself to its level. Ayo, Shiju cried out softly as it used its head to rub against Yi Qingluo's palm. Then it chased after the red-crowned crane. Jun Qingwu crossed her legs as she sat on the red-crowned crane's back. The wind blew her fine black hair. She closed her eyes, and a trace of indistinct loneliness appeared on her cold and elegant face. The red-crowned crane's speed started to slow down. Jun Qingwu opened her eyes as she patted the red-crowned crane's neck. Little thing, those are my friends. If you cause them to be unable to keep up, I will hold you responsible. Her face was still expressionless. But it wasn't hard to hear the pampering and gentleness in her tone. The red-crowned crane raised its neck as it cried out. Its voice had just ended when a young lady's sweet laughter was heard from behind. Don't worry, we won't lose them. My Shiju's greatest strength is its speed. Jun Qingwu's hand, which was caressing the red-crowned crane's neck, froze. She swiftly turned her head back. She saw Yiqing Luo and Kitty Li, who were riding on the black leopard, right behind her. Yiqing Luo looked at her smilingly. In my heart, student Jun Qingwu is also my friend. Since we have already acknowledged each other as friends, then in future, I will call you Little Qingwu. You can also call me Little Qing Luo. Who is your friend? Jun Qingwu's expression turned embarrassed, as she had not expected her words earlier to be heard clearly by Yiqing Luo. She gave a cold harumph as she turned her head away. Shiju increased its speed as it traveled alongside the red-crowned crane. Yiqing Luo turned her head around as she smiled at Jun Qingwu's embarrassed face. Little Qingwu, don't be shy. I know that you have long been conquered by my charm. Otherwise Little Qingwu would not have told me the sacred beast pearl's whereabouts. Nor would she have told me about the other method of using the sacred beast pearl. Nor would she have told me about the Miao Gu family. Nor would she have personally accompanied me to the northern continent. These few days of interaction. Yiqing Luo was very clear about this. Jun Qingwu was a tsundra, cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Of course, this degree of heat was only possible if she truly placed Jun Qingwu in her heart. Only then would she be able to feel Jun Qingwu's heat. What are you talking about? Jun Qingwu's face became more and more embarrassed and her cheeks turned red. I only helped you because I received benefits from Dizun. Don't flatter yourself. Yiqing Luo's smile remained unchanged. Although I've only interacted with Xiao Qinggu for a few days, but I also know that if Xiao Qinggu hates me and isn't willing to help me, no matter how Xian tempts you, you will not help me. I didn't say I hated you. Jun Qingwu felt her cheeks burning as she turned her head to one side, not willing to let Yiqing Luo see her embarrassment. But it doesn't mean that I like you. Yiqing Luo giggled a few times but didn't continue to force her. His teasing was done in moderation. Otherwise, if Xiao Qinggu flew into a rage out of humiliation and abandoned her and Kitty Cat, then the losses would outweigh the gains. The two beasts and 3 people only spent less than 3 days and they had already reached the northern continent's main city, Indescribable Joy City. In order to avoid trouble, Yiqing Luo and Jun Qingwu specially changed their appearances before they reached. Chapter 23-29. Yiqing Luo and Jun Qingwu produced the proof of experience with the principal's stamp to prove that they were students of Heavenly Academy and successfully entered the city. Let's go to the inn to rest first and then find out where the Miao Gu family is. Jun Qingwu looked at the crowded streets as her brows creased in displeasure. Yiqing Luo looked at Shiju, who was standing on her shoulder. It had transformed into a palm-sized form and looked like a black kitten. At this moment, it was looking around with its big round eyes, filled with curiosity. Shiju was still a young magical beast, and towards new and unfamiliar places, it had a childlike curiosity. So Yiqing Luo didn't keep this little thing into the pet space and let it follow by her side to look at the outside world. You go to the inn first, I'll bring Shiju around. Yiqing Luo tugged Shiju's swaying black tail and turned to look at Kitty Li. Kitty wants to come along? Kitty Li will go wherever sister goes. Kitty Li blinked her bright eyes as she hugged Yiqing Luo's arm. Yiqing Luo smiled as she rubbed Kitty Li's head and straightened the headscarf which covered her ears. Little Qingwu, go to the inn to book a room first. Jun Qingwu frowned as she looked at the bustling crowd in disgust. If it wasn't for the fact that there were so many people, she really wanted to fly directly to the inn. She took a deep breath, avoided the crowd and walked in the direction of the inn. Seeing Jun Qingwu's figure moving swiftly in the crowd, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laughed softly. She held Kitty Li's little hand as she squeezed into the crowd. Qingyue City was the main city of the North Continent and naturally was the most bustling city. There were all sorts of things which had never been seen before in the West Continent. Shiju looked around excitedly. Suddenly, Shiju's nose twitched as it called out softly beside Yiqing Luo's ear. Yiqing Luo followed Shiju's gaze. Not far away there was a vendor selling candied fruits. Junior Leopard also wanted to eat candied fruits? Unable to stand Shiju's sparkling eyes, Yiqing Luo took out a bag of coins from the profound phoenix ring and walked towards the vendor. Before she got near, suddenly the surrounding people suddenly dispersed as they squeezed into the two sides of the street. In just a short while the crowded street became empty. Before Yiqing Luo could react, a woman who was rushing towards the side of the street grabbed her arm. Young lady, quickly give way. If you continue to block the way, you won't be able to leave. Suddenly, a furious roar came from the front. Why is there someone there? Who dared to block the young prince's way? Drag him away. Unbeknownst to them, a huge group of guards had appeared in front of them. At the very front were two burly men clad in armor. Each of them had a wooden stick in their hands and they would hit the stall next to them from time to time. Many of the stalls were smashed and their items were scattered all over the ground. The surrounding people crowded on the side of the street, trembling, but no one dared to stop them. Before Yiqing Luo could react, the woman who was dragging her earlier knelt down on the ground with a plop. "Young Duke, please spare our lives. These two ladies have just entered the city, they don't know the rules here." The woman kowtowed hard as she tugged at Yiqing Luo's skirt. "Young lady, quickly kneel down and beg for mercy." Yiqing Luo looked at the woman beside her whose forehead was bleeding from kowtowing. She was still begging for mercy for her and Kitty Li. Yiqing Luo frowned and was just about to help the woman up. Chapter 23:30. A group of guards also rushed over in a threatening manner. Just as the burly man's leg was about to land on the woman, the burly man suddenly cried out miserably. Then his body, which was as heavy as a mountain, fell backward. The burly man fell flat on his face, his buttocks almost blossomed. The group of guards were stunned as they scrambled to help the burly man up. Who dared to play dirty with me?" The burly man covered his buttocks in pain as he stood up with the help of a few guards. His eyes revealed an ominous glint as he stared fiercely at the surroundings. The commoners on both sides of the street shivered as they shrank back. The burly man's ferocious gaze swept past the commoners. Finally, he looked at the woman who was kneeling on the ground in a daze. Following that, his gaze looked towards the two cold-looking little beauties who were standing beside the woman. For a moment, anger surged up his heart. The burly man rushed forward and stretched out his hand towards the woman. "You slut, how dare you block little prince's way and make me fall? See if I don't beat you to death." As he stretched out his hand, he raised his leg and kicked towards Yiqing Luo and Kitty Li. The woman was so scared that her body went soft. On seeing the burly man hitting the lady beside him, she suddenly pounced forward. She hugged the burly man's leg tightly. "Steward Fan, you're a magnanimous person, I'll kowtow to you, kowtow to you. These two young ladies are really the first time they entered the city and don't know the rules. I will teach them well, please. Please don't be calculative with them." The strength of the burly man who was addressed as Steward Fan was not something that a woman could control. Lin Mingya's hug had perfectly withstood the force of Steward Fan's kick. The woman spat out a mouthful of blood. Steward Fan's dark-colored luxurious robe was sprinkled with spots of red blood. Steward Fan's expression instantly turned black as his eyes widened even more. With a fierce look, he bent down and grabbed the back of the woman's collar. "How dare you dirty my clothes? Even if I sell you to a brothel, selling your body every day, selling your entire life, you still won't be able to compensate me for this piece of clothes. Slut." He raised his hand and threw a slap towards the woman's face. Bam! There was another loud noise. The burly man who was carrying the woman was once again sent flying backwards. That huge and sturdy body smashed heavily into the ground, creating a huge crater. Stones flew everywhere and the clothes of the surrounding guards were torn by the stones. It was obvious how much force Steward Fan had suffered when he was sent flying. Anger burned in Steward Fan's chest. Steward Fan pressed his stomach in disbelief. He struggled to get up. Just as he moved, he suddenly felt a fishy taste in his throat. Pfft! He spat out a large mouthful of blood. At that moment, General Manager Fan also saw it. The woman that she had lifted up was now being supported by two delicate and weak-looking beauties. The red-clothed girl lowered her head and softly comforted the woman. Her fine bangs covered half of her face. The hazy concealment actually had a kind of beauty to it. The other black-clothed young woman had a smile on her face as she hugged the woman's arm and sweetly said something. The woman looked a little worried. She whispered a few words but was stopped by the two beauties. Seeing this, if General Manager Fan still did not understand, he would be a fool. Just now he was sent flying. This time he was sent flying again, and it was all because of those two little beauties. Chapter 23:31. Steward Fan's face was malevolent as he bellowed, "Detain the three of them. Bring them back to the palace." Yes. The guards received the order and walked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. The woman's hand trembled slightly as she tugged Yiqing Luo and pushed her back forcefully. "Young lady, stop joking around. You're outsiders and don't know how scary little Lord Qingyu is. Quickly leave. I'm here. Saying that, the woman flung Yiqing Luo aside and wanted to pounce towards those guards. Apparently she wanted to use her physical body to block those guards. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and grabbed the woman's shoulder as she pulled her behind her. The woman was stunned as she started to panic. Yiqing Luo didn't turn back as her gaze swept past the 5 guards who were walking over as her lips curled into a faint arc. How much time can you delay even if you rush up? In the end we will all die here. The woman's struggling stopped. Kitty, protect her. Yiqing Luo let go of the woman. Kitty Li immediately hugged the woman's arm as she pulled her back a few steps. The woman was about to open her mouth to say something. But the scene in front of her made her dumbstruck. Only to see. The 5 guards who just came up had no time to make a move on Yiqing Luo. 1 or 2 of them unknowingly flew out and fell onto the ground. Then holding onto their waist or hugging their abdomen they rolled on the ground in pain. The other guards were all frightened by this strange scene. Steward Fan was so shocked that he held onto his chest as the pain from Yiqing Luo's kick seemed to attack his heart again. He took a few steps back as he shouted in a stutter, "Quick! Go get more people. Capture these few people." The guards took a look at their brothers who were rolling on the ground. They were hesitant as they didn't dare to move forward. Steward Fan was getting more and more furious as he endured the pain in his abdomen as he lifted his leg and kicked the guards, but, "Whoever dares to be disobedient, I will send all of you to the Elation Spring." Mentioning the Elation Spring. The faces of the guards were filled with extreme fear. One by one they swarmed towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. His long and narrow eyebrows formed a mocking cold arc. Elation Spring? What is that place? It seemed very scary. These guards were obviously afraid of her. However, he still charged forward fearlessly. Moreover, it was as if he was afraid that he would be sent to the Qingyu Spring if he was a step late. Looking at the 20 or so guards pouncing on him like a swarm of bees. The ridicule in Yiqing Luo's eyes intensified. The profound qi in his body suddenly surged out. The 20 guards were sent flying like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden. Yiqing Luo clapped her hands, crossed her arms over her chest and smiled in a relaxed manner. I only found out now that the people of the Northern Waves continent treat guests from other continents in this way. It has really broadened my horizons. The expressions of the commoners on the street changed. They trembled and tried to explain. But when he saw the group of guards lying on the ground, he felt a chill run down his spine. Then he looked at the fiendish Steward Fan who was about to go crazy from anger. Still none of them dared to speak. At this moment, the carriage that the guards had been protecting behind them was slowly lowered to the ground. A bam sound was heard. Steward Fan's fiendish expression at this moment turned humble and fawning. He speedily turned around and walked towards the side of the carriage as he spoke respectfully. "Little Prince, sorry for disturbing your mood. I will chase these troublemakers away right now." The surroundings of the carriage were draped with dark-colored muslin curtains. A hand was placed on the muslin curtains as it slowly lifted. Chapter 23:32. His voice also trembled slightly. Little Prince, I. A slap landed on Steward Fan's face. Ouch. Steward Fan screamed and covered his face, looking like a punching bag. He lowered his voice and bowed his back. Where was the arrogance and despotic attitude from before? The gauze curtain was completely lifted. A bright yellow figure walked down from the carriage. The one who came down was a young man. Although he was called a young man. In fact, other than his height and age, he really couldn't be considered as young. The young man looked to be about 12 or 13 years old. His height, Yiqing Luo estimated, shouldn't even reach her ears. Especially, the young man was chubby, almost as fat as a ball. He looked even shorter. This degree of being as fat as a ball was absolutely comparable to Fatty Master. Yiqing Luo cast a sympathetic gaze towards the 4 bearers who were carrying the carriage. To be able to carry this little prince, they were also talents. Little Prince was dressed in a bright yellow brocade robe. His face was full of fat and his facial features couldn't be seen clearly. His eyes were small, leaving only 2 slits. The only thing that could be seen was the arrogance on Little Prince's face. Everyone could see that. This little prince was held in the palm of someone's hand, coaxed and pampered as he grew up. Looking at the little prince in front of her, Yiqing Luo smiled coldly. Just as she was about to turn and leave. Suddenly he felt a burning sensation in his chest. It was this feeling again. In the class of gods when she stopped the crazy Long Yunzhan. The profound heart jade had such a situation. At that time, the burning sensation from the profound heart jade almost caused her to be injured under Long Yunzhan's sword. Why did this feeling come again? Yiqing Luo's slender brows tightened as her breathing slightly panted. So it's two little beauties. The young prince pretended to be an adult. His eyes were narrowed into slits, and it was obvious that he had evil intentions. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly. Her gaze fell on the young prince's bloated body. Little prince's chest was flashing a ball of blue light. Blue-grade profound heart jade. From the looks of it, this young prince was completely a good-for-nothing. He actually possessed an extremely high-quality blue-grade profound heart jade. No wonder her profound jade heart would send out such a notification. Last time in the class of gods, the profound heart jade had also reminded her that there was something wrong with Long Yunzhan's heart. At that time she thought that he was reminding her that Long Yunzhan's body contained the mysterious yin qi. Actually, he was reminding her of the gu poison in Long Yunzhan's body. Her divine phoenix profound heart jade was indeed very different from other profound practitioners' profound heart jades. If she cultivated properly when her strength increased, he would definitely be able to use the divine phoenix profound heart jade to see more things. For example, the gu poison in Long Yunzhan's body. Yiqing Luo's breathing smoothed out, once again suppressing the scorching feeling brought about by the profound jade heart. Coincidentally, little prince had already walked up with a wretched smile on his face. His squinted eyes were glued onto Yiqing Luo's beautiful body. This prince likes hot chili peppers like you. Little beauty, obediently follow this prince back to the residence and let this prince dote on you. This prince will spare you. Saying that, little prince's plump body had already pounced towards Yiqing Luo. Children nowadays at such a young age already knew how to tease young ladies. This skilled teasing technique, just how many ladies had he harmed? Yiqing Luo's eyes turned slightly cold as her body shifted slightly to the left. Little prince pounced on empty air. His entire body staggered and fell forward. Chapter 23:33. A loud, heavy sound reverberated. Yiqing Luo could feel the ground beneath her feet shook 3 times. Little Lord's 4 limbs were spread out as he faced the ground and fell heavily. Sounds of cold air being sucked in were heard from the surroundings. Plop. Plop. A series of voices rang out. The commoners and the guards on the side of the street all knelt on the ground, trembling in fear. They didn't even dare to lift their heads. The woman who was being supported by Kitty Lee was also frightened to the point that her body went soft. Kitty Lee couldn't hold on and both of them fell to the ground. The woman looked at little Lord who was sprawled on the ground with a frightened look, her fingers trembling. Miss? Dino? Who did you hurt? Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes as she shot a disdainful glance at little Lord and scoffed lightly. I didn't do anything, how could I hurt him? The woman's breathing was trembling and her voice was also trembling. He is the only son of the Battle King General. The only legitimate son of the Yuan family, the one and only genius child prodigy in Qingyue City. Yuan Kuang, little Lord Yuan. Child prodigy? Yiqing Luo wasn't interested in the long introduction in front, but these 2 words made her raise her eyebrows. She lifted her leg and kicked little Lord's fat butt. That's it? Also a child prodigy? That's too insulting to the word, child prodigy. This kind of unreasonable behavior made the woman even more terrified. How could the woman withstand such stimulation as her eyes rolled back and she fainted? You little slut. You dare to do this to little Lord. The Lord. Steward Fan almost fainted. He bared his teeth in anger as his murderous aura filled the air. He couldn't wait to rush up and tear Yiqing Luo into pieces. But thinking of Yiqing Luo's strength alone, under the circumstances where everyone couldn't understand, she defeated over 20 guards. How would Steward Fan dare to take his own life as a joke? He was so angry that he stomped his feet and scolded Yiqing Luo, while looking nervously at little Lord who was sprawled on the ground motionless. The other guards came to their senses. One by one, their hearts stopped as they looked at little Lord nervously. Their little Lord. Why was he lying on the ground for such a long time without moving? Could it be? Had he fallen to his death? Impossible. Their little prince was the #1 prodigy in joyous Qin City. Don't be fooled by the little prince's domineering attitude. His strength definitely gave him the capital to be arrogant. How could someone as powerful as the young prince fall to his death so easily? But why didn't the little prince get up from the ground? If something really happened to the young prince, the guards accompanying them would definitely be executed by the War King's mansion. Thinking of this consequence, no matter how terrified the guards were towards Yiqing Luo, they still walked over one by one. Young prince. The guards moved next to Yuan Kuang. They were even cautiously looking at Yiqing Luo, who was just a few steps away. One of the guards extended his trembling hand towards Yuan Kuang. The other guards struggled to lift Yuan Kuang up from the ground. The guard's hand had just touched Yuan Kuang's nose. Suddenly, the guard let out a blood-curdling scream. There was a cracking sound. The guard was thrown out of the room. Fresh blood spilled all over the ground. Yuan Kuang, who was being supported by the guards, raised his head at some point. He was steadied and his feet stood on the ground. In front of him was a huge deep pit. The ground was cracked into densely packed cracks. In his hand there was a bloody palm. Chapter 23:34. The guards hurriedly tidied up the mess. Yuan Kuang cut a sorry figure, but he was tidied up neatly. He tugged at his broken hand, which was dripping with blood, and let the blood dye his hand red. His expression was sinister as he stared at Yiqing Luo viciously. This gaze made Yiqing Luo raise her slender brows. At such a young age he actually had such a strong killing intent. From this, it could be seen that many people had died in his hands. The young Duke of the War King's mansion, a child prodigy who possessed a blue-grade profound heart jade. He was so arrogant and willful, and he was so vicious that he would beat anyone who stood in his way. He was really a troublemaker. He had only just arrived at the Northern Wave continent, yet he was already able to provoke such a powerful figure. "Sister." Kitty Lee called out to Yiqing Luo softly, "Do you need Kitty Lee's help? You just need to take care of that woman, leave the rest to me." Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly, her voice gentle. When she looked at Kitty Lee, her eyes slightly curved. She looked extremely sweet. Yuan Kuang's malicious gaze was filled with dense murderous intent as he stared at Yiqing Luo. This was the first time he had suffered such humiliation since he was born. But looking at Yiqing Luo's smiling face, Yuan Kuang's evil aura had somehow dissipated quite a bit. To be honest, the red-clothed woman's appearance could not be considered to be extremely beautiful, nor was there anything breathtaking about her. All in all, he was pleasing to the eye. But her unattainable attitude, as if nothing mattered to her. It really made him, the little prince who had never been wronged or frustrated, extremely itchy. There was a kind of restless feeling in his heart. He wanted to conquer this woman in front of him. Yuan Kuang's eyes were gradually filled with fiery evil thoughts. This woman had made him so embarrassed in front of everyone. Wouldn't killing her be letting her off too easily? Or completely destroy her so-called unattainable status? Destroy her unsullied by the mud? Fuck her. Torture her. This was the best punishment for her. Steward Fan, who was standing to the side, had taken care of the young prince for 8 years. How could he not know what the young prince was thinking? Just now, when the young prince fell to the ground, he didn't dare to help him up. After returning to the manor, if the young prince were to pursue the matter, he could not absolve himself from the blame. The young prince's temperament, he understood. Although the young prince was young, his methods were unparalleled. Steward Fan clenched his fists tightly as his murderous eyes stared at Yiqing Luo. He thought about the punishment he might receive from the young prince when he returned to the manor. Chief Steward Fan resolutely chose. He had to take the initiative to capture that little slut for the little prince to show his loyalty. Little bitch. The fact that Xiao Wangye took a liking to you is your good fortune from your previous life. How dare you not know what's good for you? Must you suffer a little before you learn to be obedient? Steward Fan roared angrily, and a thick profound qi suddenly burst out from his body. The profound energy surged like thousands of layers of huge waves, charging straight towards Yiqing Luo's face. Boom boom boom. A loud explosion resounded throughout the entire Joy City. But in an instant, it had completely covered Yiqing Luo's petite figure. The people huddled in the corner of the street screamed in fear. That little girl. It was actually covered by Steward Fan's Xian energy. That little girl, how would there be any chance of survival? Steward Fan looked at the rumbling Xian wave in front of him. The surrounding stalls and shops were all crushed to pieces. He laughed complacently. A little girl was indeed a little girl. Chapter 23:35. He didn't want to give that little bitch a chance to play tricks. What ability did that little bitch have to win against him? Pa! A slap landed on Steward Fan's head. Steward Fan's laughter stopped abruptly. Idiot! When did I say that I wanted that little bitch's life? Yuan Kuang gritted his teeth and stared at Steward Fan viciously. The fat on his face trembled. Little prince, listen to me. Chief Steward Fan's aura instantly retracted, and he bowed towards Yuan Kuang with a flattering smile. This lowly one didn't use too much profound energy, at most she won't be able to move. Let's carry her back and let the little duke personally teach Zhou Jiao. It'll definitely be a different experience. Steward Fan's last sentence had a profound meaning. Yuan Kuang's eyes suddenly lit up. He licked his lips with his scarlet tongue. That's more like it. Go and carry that little bitch back. I can't wait to taste her. Steward Fan smiled obsequiously. Then he hurriedly swaggered in the direction where the profound qi had enveloped. The whole street had been turned into a mess. The ground was full of gravel and cracks spread out like a spider web. Steward Fan walked on the gravel making a crunching sound. The people knelt on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. They sighed silently in their hearts. Another woman had suffered a calamity. Steward Fan stepped into the Xian qi. Thick waves of qi were still rolling and rolling. Steward Fan's figure was faintly discernible in the qi waves. Bang! Suddenly there was a loud sound of collision. The gravel on the ground was suddenly blown up by a sharp whirlwind. It was dozens of feet high. The strong wind waves lingered into a vortex. The qi waves rushed toward them from all directions. Ah! A blood-curdling scream came from the vortex. The people's hearts trembled. This voice, it was Steward Fan's voice. This scream also made Yuan Kuang's face turn serious. He glanced at the air billows that were swept up by the whirlpool to a height of dozens of feet, completely concealing the scene inside. Yuan Kuang's expression changed abruptly. In a split second, dark clouds covered his face. Damn it! That little bitch. Yuan Kuang's figure blurred. His fat body immediately disappeared in front of everyone. He charged towards the layers of whirlpools. However, as soon as Yuan Kuang approached, something seemed to be flying towards him. Yuan Kuang's face darkened. With a wave of his hand he sent that thing flying. Bang! That thing flew out of the vortex and rolled on the ground. The surrounding people sucked in a breath of cold air. Wasn't the thing that was thrown out Steward Fan covered in blood? At that moment Steward Fan was lying limply on the ground, motionless. His face was covered in blood, making his ferocious face look even more ferocious. Yuan Kuang stared in disbelief at the thing he had just sent flying. Looking at Steward Fan's wretched appearance, the cold light in his eyes kept darting about. The blood on Steward Fan's face was seeping out from his eyes. That little bitch dug out Steward Fan's eyes. Steward Fan's limbs were bent at an extremely strange angle. Obviously the meridians in his limbs were cut. And Steward Fan's lower body was also dripping with blood. Chapter 23:36. Oh, didn't you want to teach me this week? Come on, be pretentious. Anyway, I have a lot of time. A clear laughter was heard from that profound qi. The young lady's slender and elegant figure slowly revealed itself. The red dress was like a blazing sun, setting off the young lady's not considered stunning but pretty face, extremely enchanting. The surrounding commoners saw this scene. In their hearts, they were not only shocked by this cruel and bloody scene. The shock towards Yiqing Luo. Everyone's breathing had unconsciously slowed down and lightened up. No one dared to make any sound. This lady had too much guts. She actually crippled little Duke's man. She actually dared to provoke little Duke. You. Yuan Kuang's eyes widened, filled with disbelief and anger. He pointed at Yiqing Luo. The fats on his body kept trembling. Yiqing Luo crippled Steward Fan's actions. He was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. Shock, aghast, uncontrollable anger, but there was also a faint trace of excitement. Such a complicated emotion. Yuan Kuang himself couldn't understand it. Yiqing Luo was like a high and mighty queen, step by step, walking towards Yuan Kuang in a majestic manner. Her long and narrow eyes pulled out a cold arc of contempt. Her lips curled upwards as she sneered. So the child prodigy little duke who has been pampered by thousands is followed by this kind of trash. Just this bit of ability and you dare to rob a good girl on the streets? Yuan Kuang was still in a daze. He was forced to take a few steps back by Yi Qingluo's imposing manner. His fat body made a thud-thud sound as he stepped on the ground. He stared at the beautiful face in front of him, as his throat unconsciously made a swallowing sound. His narrow eyes were filled with evil thoughts. In an instant he had completely forgotten about the vicious things that Yi Qingluo had done earlier. Yi Qingluo naturally understood Yuan Kuang's gaze. He sneered. This so-called child prodigy little duke was really a spoiled child. Lawless, as if there would be someone to hold up the sky for him even if it collapsed. That steward Fan dared to be so arrogant. He must have been by Yuan Kuang's side for at least 5 years. Steward Fan was crippled by her. Not only was Yuan Kuang not angry, he even had evil thoughts towards her. She had really been spoiled to the point where she had become a heartless person. Yuan Kuang's chubby face suddenly broke into a smile. He thought of himself as elegant, distinguished, and refined. He opened his mouth and was about to say something. Suddenly, a clamor came from not far away. In this silent scene it was extremely clear. Following that, a group of about 20 to 30 people walked over from the front. Before the person arrived, a clear and melodious voice first came over. Yuan Kuang, I heard that you've encountered some difficulties. Ah. There's something that you, Yuan Kuang, can't handle? I knew it. What kind of *T prodigy is that? You gave yourself that title. When he heard the voice coming, Yuan Kuang's expression darkened. His fat face, which was filled with evil thoughts, was overcast. Yi Qingluo noticed the change in Yuan Kuang's expression as she raised her eyebrows in interest. There was actually someone who could make the lawless little duke reveal this kind of expression in this world. This little duke, wasn't he the only one who reigned supreme? Just as she was thinking, those 20 to 30 people had already arrived in a grandiose manner. Chapter 23:37. It was a little girl about the same age as Yuan Kuang. She was wearing a luxurious long dress of hundreds of birds. The colorful dress made the little girl look full of vigor. However, his face was filled with arrogance and willfulness. Even the vigor that a person of his age should have was somewhat overshadowed. Xiao Lingling, what are you doing here? Yuan Kuang's face was filled with impatience. The girl called Xiao Lingling proudly raised her chin and said, The servant said that you met someone who wants to teach you a lesson. I'm here to see you make a fool of yourself. Yuan Kuang's face was sinister as he glared at the people around him. Which blind guy had actually spread this matter out? Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Yuan Kuang's gaze. After living in Joy City for so many years, how could they not know Yuan Kuang wanted to kill everyone present who had seen this scene today? Xiao Lingling didn't realize that her words had triggered Yuan Kuang's desire to massacre the entire street. Even if she sensed it, she would not say anything. In any case, lowly commoners. So what if they were killed? It didn't matter. Xiao Lingling smiled as she looked at Steward Fan, who was covered in blood behind Yuan Kuang. Her eyes suddenly lit up. She trotted forward. After seeing Steward Fan's miserable state, she did not have the frightened expression that a young girl should have. Instead, he licked his lips excitedly. Yuan Kuang, someone actually killed your chief steward in front of you. This is too inconceivable. He turned around and looked around. Who is it? Who is it? Who is it that dares to not give face to the young prince? Let this princess have a look. I must praise that person. Although that was the case, but Yi Qingluo, who was standing not too far away from Xiao Lingling. He could clearly sense the murderous intent in Xiao Lingling's eyes as she searched the surroundings. Looks like Xiao Lingling wanted to praise that person, but it was a lie. His real intention was to kill that person. This Xiao Lingling didn't hate Yuan Kuang as much as she seemed on the surface. What did he mean by coming to see Yuan Kuang make a fool of himself? With such a large group of people. No matter how you looked at it, it looked like they were here to cheer for Yuan Kuang. Suddenly Xiao Lingling's cold and arrogant voice sounded in his ears. Yi Qingluo's gaze moved slightly as she looked at Xiao Lingling. Only then did she realize that all the guards' gazes were focused on her. Yuan Kuang's guards even pointed at her with their fingers. So it's you who dares to challenge Yuan Kuang? You even killed General Manager Fan? Xia Lingling raised her head and asked arrogantly. Xia Lingling had only reached Yiqing Luo's shoulder. He was still a child. In terms of imposing manner, Yiqing Luo was dwarfed by a huge chunk. Xia Lingling stood in front of Yiqing Luo, looking like a little kid who couldn't get any sweets to eat. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she looked at the young lady who was putting on an act with a smile which didn't look like a smile as she laughed softly. Firstly, I don't have the leisure to pick a fight with a wimpy kid, my time is very precious. Second, I didn't kill Chief Steward Fan. I only crippled him in self-defense. In the end, she added with a smile, don't worry, I won't die. Xia Lingling did not expect that this red-dressed girl who looked to be at most 1 or 2 years older than her, would speak so rudely. Xia Lingling, who had never been wronged, was so angry that her eyes turned red. Chapter 23:38. Xia Lingling's furious howl. And it finally made the surrounding people regain their senses. They looked at Yiqing Luo in shock. This young lady not only challenged Little Prince, but also disrespected Little Region Princess. These two people, any one of them was not someone a young lady like her could afford to offend. Outsiders didn't even bother to inquire about the rules of Qingyue City. This time round, not only did she lose her life, she even implicated them. The commoners thought of Yuan Kuang's gaze earlier. Their hearts felt goosebumps. Their hearts started to resent Yiqing Luo for not knowing what was good for her. But the resentment in the commoners' hearts. Yiqing Luo didn't know. Nor was she interested to know about such things. Her gaze was calm and her smile was faint. She bent over slightly and leaned over, looking down at Xia Lingling. I'm not interested who you are. I don't know if I will die now, but I can confirm that you will definitely die in front of me. Icy cold words, one word at a time, spat out from Yiqing Luo's lips. Like being sealed in ice, the ridiculing gaze made Xia Lingling tremble as she cried out in fright and retreated a few steps back. Xia Lingling was wearing a thick bird dress. When she stumbled back, her feet stepped on the hem of her dress. A loud thump was heard. Xia Lingling fell heavily onto the ground and rolled into a ball. The serving maids were terrified as they hurriedly went forward and helped Xia Lingling up. Xia Lingling's fall was extremely heavy. Her meticulously made-up hair was messed up from the impact. Her face was stained with gravel and dust. And the feathers of the 100 birds costume looked comical and ridiculous. The maids hurriedly wiped the dust off her face and tidied up her messy hair. Xia Lingling was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Looking at the surrounding people, she felt that they were all laughing at her. She, Xia Lingling, the current monarch's most doted little region princess, the northern continent's overbearing and unscrupulous little region princess. Who dared to laugh at her? Who dared to humiliate her? Xia Lingling stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. That little slut who caused her to embarrass herself, actually acted as though nothing had happened and stood there quietly, looking at her smilingly. Was he laughing at her? Laughing at her? Xia Lingling screamed, ah. She pointed at Yiqing Luo as she screamed madly, kill her. Kill this little bitch for me. The guards that Xia Lingling brought along immediately rushed towards Yiqing Luo. Before he could make a move, he heard an angry shout, stop. The guards were startled, and when they turned their heads, they saw Yuan Kuang walking over with a body full of fat. This is the woman this prince has taken a fancy to, who dares to touch her. Xia Lingling looked at Yuan Kuang in disbelief. Are you crazy? Yuan Kuang's eyes were filled with excitement as he stared at Yiqing Luo in a daze. His eyeballs couldn't wait to be glued onto her. He smiled wretchedly. This prince is very clear-headed. It's only interesting to conquer this kind of spicy little chili. This prince likes this kind of style. She killed Steward Fan. A glint of jealousy flashed past Xia Lingling's eyes as she stared at Yiqing Luo resentfully. Moreover, she's so ugly, totally incomparable to those women in your residence. If this little beauty is happy, then so be it. Yuan Kuang totally disregarded Xia Lingling's expression. This prince is used to eating delicacies, and now I like this kind of delicate-looking woman. Chapter 23:39. Yuan Kuang couldn't be bothered with Xia Lingling. He looked at Yiqing Luo and laughed arrogantly. Little beauty, other than this duke, no one can protect you now. If you don't want to die, follow this duke back to the residence now. This prince will not fuss over your rude behavior today. A quick-witted guard behind Yuan Kuang hurriedly chimed in. Miss, I'm afraid you don't know, but the young princess has a noble status. In the entire Northern Wave continent, her words are absolute. She can do whatever she wants. If this matter reaches the ears of the sovereign, not only will you be unable to leave the Northern Wave continent, your family will also suffer the punishment of the sovereign of the Northern Wave continent. The guard praised Xiao Lingling to the heavens. Xiao Lingling's face was filled with anger. Under the flattery of the guard, a proud smile gradually appeared on his face. She harumphed heavily at Yiqing Luo. It seemed that she was going to tell the imperial uncle about this. She wanted her uncle to kill this little bitch. Let the royal family execute this little slut's 9 generations. The guard sized up Yiqing Luo's expression and continued. But, as long as you follow our little prince with his protection, little region princess will definitely not pursue this matter. Hearing this, Xiao Lingling's proud expression froze. She widened her eyes and opened her mouth to say that she would definitely pursue this matter to the end. But before he could speak, he was stopped by Yuan Kuang's gaze. Xiao Lingling felt wronged. She fiercely stomped her feet, bit her lips and said resentfully, Yuan Kuang, you helped that bitch bully me. I won't talk to you anymore. She angrily pushed away the maidservant who was supporting her and rushed towards her carriage. When he passed by Yuan Kuang, he slammed into Yuan Kuang. However, Yuan Kuang was such a sturdy lump. Xiao Lingling crashed into Yuan Kuang, but she couldn't move him at all. Instead, he was sent flying. Xiao Lingling was so angry that she crawled up from the ground and rushed to her carriage. Go, go, go. I don't want to see him again. The maidservants hurriedly followed and stood by the side of the carriage to serve. A group of people quickly left the street. It was like a farce. He left like a farce. Yiqing Luo had her arms crossed in front of her chest from start to finish, as though she was watching a show, observing the entire process. As soon as Xiao Lingling left, Yuan Kuang stuck to her. Little beauty, this prince helped you get rid of a troublemaker. Shouldn't you repay this prince? Yiqing Luo's lips curled into an enchanting smile. Her eyes were mixed with a gloomy luster. Little Duke, are you sure you want me to repay you? Yuan Kuang's heart was stirred by Yiqing Luo's smile. He immediately laughed foolishly. Little beauty, could it be that you want to repay me with your body? If you devote yourself to me, although you're a bit older, but this prince doesn't mind. As he spoke, his fat body was already trembling as he pounced on him. Yiqing Luo smiled even more enchantingly. A cold light flickered in her charming eyes. The moment Yuan Kuang pounced forward, a red fan was pressed against Yuan Kuang's chest. Young prince. Yiqing Luo gave a low laugh. Her pair of charming eyes seemed to be able to hook people's souls. Yuan Kuang almost went into a daze. Especially in that pair of charming eyes, there was a faint cold glint, which simply made the blood in his heart boil, clamoring to conquer her. Yuan Kuang didn't notice the abnormality at this time. But the crowd were so shocked that they sucked in a mouthful of cold air. One must know that the degree of Yuan Kuang's obesity could no longer be expressed with numbers. Such a big lump of meat. Chapter 2340. Little beauty. This prince will definitely dote on you. Yuan Kuang grinned sinisterly as he stretched out his hand to grab that red fan and swiftly caught Yiqing Luo's hand. But his hand was just about to touch Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had already avoided his touch. Along with that red fan, it also left Yuan Kuang's chest. Yuan Kuang, who had lost his support, his fat body was unstable as he fell heavily onto the ground. Just like before, his 4 limbs were wide open facing the ground. The crowd drew in a cold breath again. They really couldn't understand how Yiqing Luo managed to do it time and time again, to make the legendary little marquis to be in such a sorry state. Little Duke, don't worry, later I will definitely let you suffer enough. Yiqing Luo stepped on Yuan Kuang's back as she bent down, smiling at that lump of meat beneath her feet. Yuan Kuang struggled for a few times, but couldn't break free from Yiqing Luo's strength. He turned his face sideways, the fat on his face pressed against the ground, looking extremely oily. A pair of slender eyes was staring at Yiqing Luo excitedly. Yiqing Luo. Damn, this guy, could he be a masochist? The deeper the torture, the heavier the torture, the more excited he got. This was an illness. It had to be cured. Sister, this woman's breathing seems to be getting heavier. Kitty Lee's voice suddenly came from behind. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she immediately turned her head over. She saw the woman who had pleaded for them earlier, lying in Kitty Li's arms, panting heavily, as though she would be out of breath any time. Yiqing Luo flicked her finger, speedily took out a bottle of pills from the profound phoenix ring and threw it to Kitty Li. Feed her one. Following that, she retracted her gaze and increased the strength on her feet. She looked down at Yuan Kuang's oily fat face, sarcastically curled her lips and said word by word, "Just a wimpy kid, you want to learn how to tease a young lady? You fancy me, but I don't fancy a wimpy kid like you." Saying that, she casually gave Yuan Kuang a kick. Looked like a light kick. Yuan Kuang's fat body was kicked in the direction of a group of guards. The guards swarmed forward, wanting to catch Yuan Kuang. However, they were all pressed down by Yuan Kuang. There were 2 guards whose heads were pressed to the ground by the young prince's fat body and turned into meat patties. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about Yuan Kuang anymore, but swiftly turned around and walked over to Kitty Li. She bent down and picked up the woman. Then he walked to the other side of the street. The group of guards wanted to give chase, but they didn't dare to. Even the young prince couldn't beat him. Even if they went up, they would just be sending themselves to death in vain. She looked at the young prince grimacing in pain and screaming in pain. The guards decisively chose. She inquired about little lord's well-being and directly ignored the 3 of them who were leaving. Yiqing Luo carried the woman and speedily left the street, turning into a quieter alley. Yiqing Luo placed the woman against the wall and took her pulse. The bleeding on the woman's forehead had already stopped. Her face was pale and she looked extremely weak. Yiqing Luo wasn't stingy with her pills. She fed the woman another pill and helped to bandage the wound on her forehead. "Sister, why didn't you just kill that wimpy kid? He's simply too much." Kitty Li looked at the woman's pale face and said angrily. Chapter 23:41. Moreover, this woman seems to have suffered too much shock and her heart can't take it. If we delay any longer, her life might be in danger. After all, this woman did it for her, to remind her and to save her, and that was why she brought death upon herself. Then he kowtowed for her, causing his wound to become inflamed. If she ignored the woman, she would be too cold and heartless. After treating the woman's wound, Yiqing Luo kept the things properly. Kitty Li was still angry about what happened to Yuan Kuang. Seeing Yiqing Luo stop what she was doing, Kitty Li placed her head on Yiqing Luo's shoulder, pouted and said unhappily, "Sister, Yuan Kuang actually dared to tease you. How could you let him off so easily? Why don't I go to his place tonight and give him a paw?" Yiqing Luo rubbed Kitty Li's little head. "Do you think I'm that kind of kind-hearted person?" "No," Kitty Li answered decisively. Yiqing Luo patted her head. "That's it. But sister has let Yuan Kuang off just like that. He will definitely come looking for trouble with us." Kitty Li raised her pretty face as she blinked her big bright eyes, looking at Yiqing Luo in puzzlement. Yiqing Luo smiled mysteriously as a crafty glint flashed past her eyes. Didn't he keep saying that he wanted pain? I'll let him suffer as much as he wants. Yuan Kuang was directly carried back by a group of guards. Steward Fan, who had been completely crippled, was also carried back. When the 2 of them were carried back to the Battle King's mansion in a sorry state, the servant who was guarding the door was dumbfounded. Usually the young prince and Steward Fan would come back from outside. When was he not in high spirits? When had he not returned with his spoils of war and a full load of them? This was the first time the young prince was carried back by someone. Furthermore, there was not a single part of Steward Fan's body that was unscathed. His body was drenched in blood and riddled with scars. He was a complete cripple. The entire Battle Emperor's mansion was shocked by the sight. For a moment, everyone in the War King's mansion was in a state of panic. They hurriedly took care of the young duke. The young duke was the lifeblood of the War King's mansion. Now he was being carried home with injuries. If General Battle King knew, the entire War King's mansion would suffer. However, how could the War King General not know that Yuan Kuang was being carried back? After receiving the news, the Warlord General and his wife hurried back to the Warlord residence. Then she saw that he was lying on the bed with his eyes closed and there were obvious scratches on his face. The general's wife rushed to the bedside, her heart aching. She grabbed Yuan Kuang's hand and softly asked about his well-being. Yuan Kuang was unconscious and could not answer the general's wife. The Warlord General's eyes were as big as copper bells, and his eyes were filled with rage. "Who is it? Who dared to hurt this prince's son? This prince wants that person to pay with his life." The guards who followed Yuan Kuang out to commit crimes were all forced to kneel in front of Yuan Kuang's door. Hearing the War King General's furious roar, they all trembled and knelt on the ground. Pai son, wake up. Mother is here, wake up, open your eyes and look at mother. The general's wife grabbed Yuan Kuang's hand and cried desperately. The crying Battle King General felt a throbbing pain on his forehead. He was annoyed and berated. Shut up. Your son is not dead yet, why are you crying? Chapter 2342. The Battle King General's eyes were filled with anger. Everyone in Qinghua City knows that Yuan Kuang is my son. Who dares to touch him? Looking at his son's injuries, the Battle King General was too lazy to blame the general's wife. He glared at the guards kneeling on the ground. Speak. Who was the one who dared to touch Kuang? Have you arrested that person yet? The guards felt wronged. They looked at Steward Fan who was lying on the ground covered in blood but no one cared about him. Then they looked at Yuan Kuang who was lying on the bed. He only had a few scratches on his body, but he was surrounded by doctors and maids who were taking care of him. The contrast was too strong. However, as guards they did not dare to say anything. They could only reply in a trembling voice, Battle King General, he ran away, bang. The guard who replied was sent flying by the Battle King General's kick. This kick was filled with raging Xianxia. The guard's blood splattered everywhere as he was torn into pieces. The dozens of guards shivered and knelt on the ground stiffly. Even their breathing became cautious. Ran away. You let my son's man escape after he injured him? The Battle King General's eyes flashed with ruthlessness and anger. You are a bunch of trash. What's the use of me keeping you trash? Hearing the Battle King General's tone, it was obvious that he wanted to kill them. The guards were so scared that their bodies went soft. One by one they begged in panic. It's not that we let him escape, it's the young master. The young master did not allow us to touch that young lady. The young master has taken a fancy to that young lady. The young master did not dare to disobey the young master's words. Young lady? The Battle King General's angry face froze. What young lady? Battle King General. It's the young master. The young master has taken a fancy to a young lady on the street. That young lady has a fiery temper and has attacked the young master several times. We wanted to protect the young master and capture that young lady, but the young master, he did not allow us to touch that young lady, the guards explained while trembling with fear. They carefully observed the general's expression. One of the more courageous guards fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva and mustered up his courage to say, General, the young prince, he is the publicly acknowledged genius child prodigy of the ingratiating Joy City. In the entire Northern Waves continent, I'm afraid that no one can easily injure the young prince. If the young prince was unwilling, the young prince wouldn't be injured. The War King General frowned. The guard's words made sense. He was well aware of Kuanger's strength. To injure or leave a scar on Kuanger's body, one had to be some kind of senior. However, a girl that could catch Kuanger's eye must also be a young and beautiful girl. In that case, it was absolutely impossible for him to hurt Kuang. When the Warlord General heard this, his anger gradually dissipated. If Kuanger was willing to do this for a girl, then it would just be a game for him. However, he was a little interested in that little girl. He knew that Kuanger was the young prince. He actually dared to reject Kuanger? How long would Kuanger be interested in such a tough bone? The War King General felt that this was just a game. However, the madam of the general who loved her son so much did not think so. She suddenly stood up and strode to the door. Chapter 2343. Since Kuanger likes that girl, just get someone to bring her back. The Warlord General waved his hand impatiently and returned to the bed, looking down at Yuan Kuang. Just get her back. That little slut, I can't even bear to hurt my son. She dared to use Kuanger's love to hurt my handsome face to this state. How can I let it go like this? The general's wife clenched her fists, her eyes filled with killing intent. All of you immediately draw a portrait of that little slut and search the entire city. You must bring her to the Warlord Mansion before dark. The general's wife and the Warlord General met and fell in love on the battlefield. The general's wife often followed the Warlord General to battle on the battlefield. Naturally, she had the aura of a general's wife. The guards were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. They hurriedly accepted the order and carefully retreated. Only after leaving Yuan Kuang's courtyard did they heave a sigh of relief. Inside the room, A doctor was applying medicine to Yuan Kuang. The warlord general asked a few questions. He confirmed that Yuan Kuang had indeed only suffered a few scratches. The general's wife almost cried when she heard this. At this time, a youth wearing a navy blue robe rushed in. He knelt on the ground. Warlord general, general's wife. I beg you, give my father justice. The warlord general furrowed his brows and looked at the youth kneeling in front of him. The youth had already crawled to a corner. The warlord general then realized that there was a small stretcher there. On the stretcher was the bloodied and injured Chief Steward Fan. Father, wake up. The youth lay on Chief Steward Fan's body and cried. The warlord general then remembered that Chief Steward Fan, who had been taking care of Yuan Kuang, had also been crippled. The youth was Chief Steward Fan's son, Fan Jianren. He kowtowed to the warlord general. General, I beg you, save my father. Avenge my father. That slut not only crippled my father, she also injured the young lord. She doesn't put the warlord mansion in her eyes at all. Fan Jinren's eyes were filled with an ominous glint. He clenched his fists tightly and tears streamed down his face. Fan Jinren's appearance caused the warlord general's face to sink slightly. His tightly knit brows wrinkled a few times. Fan Jinren had been by Steward Fan's side since he was young, so he was very good at reading people's expressions. He immediately hammered his head and said in an angry tone, General, this lowly one specially heard about the situation at that time. That little slut clearly knew the little prince's identity, but she kept on spouting wild words and humiliating the little prince. He even attacked the young prince several times. Not only that, but that little slut also injured the young prince's guard. Shouting at the little prince. Even when Princess Lingling came, she was seduced by the little slut and made Princess Lingling run away in anger. Princess Lingling is also involved in this matter. The warlord general's expression changed. Fan Jianren clenched his fists and raised his head. It's absolutely true. Because Princess Lingling ran away in anger because of the young prince, my father. He has taken care of the young prince for 8 years. Naturally, he could see the young prince's love for that slut, so he took the initiative to capture that slut for the young prince. But I didn't expect. He kowtowed hard on the ground. This lowly one begs the general to capture that slut, lest that slut hurt the young prince. Where did that young lady come from? How could she even injure Chief Steward Fan? The warlord general narrowed his sinister eyes. Not only was he injured, but he was also seriously injured. He was completely crippled. Chapter 2344. Could it be? Was she targeting the King of War's residence? This thought made General Zhang Wang raise his guard against the girl. He called out a few names. 2 men dressed as soldiers immediately came in from the door. The general ordered in a deep voice, after you get the portrait, quickly arrest that girl and bring her to the King of War's residence. I want to interrogate her personally. Yes, General. The 2 men quickly retreated like the wind. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across Fan Jinren's eyes. His father had sacrificed so much for the King of War's residence, wholeheartedly and conscientiously. He did not expect the general's attitude towards his father to be so cold. If it was not because it involved Yuan Kuang. He was afraid. The general would not take the matter of Chief Steward Fan being crippled seriously. Fan Jianren pursed his lips and suppressed his dissatisfaction towards the general. On the surface he put on a grateful expression. Just as he was about to speak, he heard the nervous voice of the general's wife. Doctor, how is my son? Other than the abrasions on his face, where else is he injured? Everyone's attention immediately focused on the doctor. The doctor shook his head. It's nothing serious. I've already applied medicine. He should be fine after resting for half a month. Are you sure you've checked carefully? Are you sure Kuang is really fine? It's just a scratch. Why hasn't Kuang woken up yet? The general's wife asked anxiously. Madam, the general shouted. I trust Dr. Lu's medical skills very much. Dr. Lu was the accompanying military doctor of the King of War. His medical skills were excellent, and his diagnosis and treatment were never wrong. The general's wife naturally knew this as well. But seeing Kuang in a coma, she felt heartache and panic. Dr. Lu waved his hand. The young prince might be tired, that's why he has been unconscious. Tell the servants to cook some porridge. When the young prince wakes up, we'll fill his stomach first. The general's wife hurriedly ordered the servants to go to the kitchen. Just as she sent Dr. Lu to the door, suddenly the maids exclaimed. The general's wife immediately turned around and saw Yuan Kuang sitting at the head of the bed. Kuang. The general's wife's eyes lit up and she rushed over happily. Kuang, you're finally awake. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Are you hungry? Yuan Kuang didn't reply. He just sat there stiffly. The general's wife had already walked to the bedside. She stretched out her hand wanting to caress Yuan Kuang's face. However, her hand was suddenly grabbed by Yuan Kuang. Kuang. The general's wife felt a sharp pain in her wrist. In the next instant, Yuan Kuang jumped up from the bed. Such a big lump of fat just like that pressed the general's wife to the ground. The general's wife grimaced in pain. The back of her head hit the ground, causing the earth to shake. Before she could react, Yuan Kuang suddenly opened his mouth and bit the general's wife's wrist. That bite was extremely heavy. He bit off the flesh on the general's wife's hand. They could even see a large expanse of white bones. The general's wife struggled in pain, but she was afraid of hurting her son. Master, quick, bring Kuang, she shouted, wanting to help General Zhang Wang. Who would have thought that after Yuan Kuang took that bite his whole body would hold the bloody meat in his mouth and he would shake his head while drooling. An even more shocking scene followed closely behind. They saw Yuan Kuang. While shaking his head, his body was like a beast, shaking his buttocks continuously on the general's wife's body. Chapter 23:45. Yuan Kuang's actions made everyone present turn pale with fright. The servants and maids all screamed and covered their eyes. In the next moment Yuan Kuang's actions were even more unsightly. He was like an animal shaking his body. The lump of flesh in his mouth was flung away. He lowered his head and bit off a bloody piece of flesh from the general's wife's shoulder. The general's wife sucked in a breath of cold air. She wanted to struggle and push Yuan Kuang away. But she was afraid that her strength would be too great and hurt her son, so she didn't even dare to use profound qi. Another piece of flesh was bitten off by Yuan Kuang again. Master, quickly pull Kuang air away. The general's wife frowned, her breathing somewhat chaotic. She often went to the battlefield, injuries were inevitable. Although it was painful to have a piece of flesh bitten off, it was still bearable. The only thing she couldn't bear was Yuan Kuang's actions. And in front of so many servant girls and manservants. Just as the general's wife was about to cry out, the sound of cloth being torn was heard. The general's wife was startled and immediately screamed. Tearing. Yuan Kuang's hands constantly tore off the general's wife's clothes. No one knew what was going on. Yuan Kuang's nails were so sharp that they could easily tear the general's wife's clothes into pieces. In a short while the general's wife's body was exposed to the air. Yuan Kuang was still shaking non-stop. In public, the manservants and maids couldn't even scream in fear at this moment. Each and every one of them was weak, kneeling on the ground. Their eyes were full of fear. Little Prince actually wanted to do that kind of thing to my mother. And in front of my father, they came across such a shocking secret. How could the general still let them live? Kuang air. General Zhang Wang recovered from his shock. His face was gloomy as he quickly walked forward, wanting to pull Yi Tian Kuang away from the general's wife. General, wait. Dr. Lu quickly stopped General Zhang Wang. Little Prince seems to have lost his mind. If you go to stop him, I'm afraid he will bite the general. General Zhang Wang withdrew his hand. What should I do? Look at young prince's condition, young prince. Dr. Lu had not finished his words. The general's wife screamed, ah. He saw that the clothes on the general's wife had been completely torn apart. Yuan Kuang was like an animal in heat looking for a place. The general's wife was so frightened that she kept pushing Yuan Kuang. However, the lump of meat was like a mountain, crushing the general's wife to the point where she couldn't even breathe. But he couldn't bear to use his profound qi. How could he compare to the crazed Yuan Kuang? When General Warlord saw Yuan Kuang's actions, his expression turned extremely ugly. At this time he didn't care whether Yuan Kuang would attack him or not. General, the young prince is obviously suffering from lust poison. Just find someone to cure him. Dr. Lu quickly finished his words. The Battle King General's footsteps halted. His gaze swept across Fan Jianren, who was closest to him. Suddenly his eyes dimmed. He bent down, grabbed Fan Jianren and threw him towards Yuan Kuang. Yuan Kuang was fiercely smashed. He raised his bloodshot eyes and stared at Fan Jianren. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the general's wife flipped over, pulled the fine cloth to cover her body, and distanced herself from Yuan Kuang. Ah! Chapter 2346. Before he could stand up, Yuan Kuang pressed down on him. Just like the general's wife, he bit Fan Jianren's flesh. Tightly, he tore Fan Jianren's clothes. Fan Jianren struggled. A pill slid down his throat. He widened his eyes in horror and saw Elder Lu, who seemed to be full of righteousness, standing in front of him, sprinkling a bottle of medicine that emitted a strange fragrance into the surroundings. This taste was exactly the same as the taste of the pill he had just fed him. Fan Jianren's heart was alarmed and he was just about to escape. But he had no strength at all. Instead, an indescribable heat surged up. How could Fan Jianren not understand? The medicine that Dr. Lu had just fed him was lust poison. General's wife, let's go out first. Dr. Lu looked at the battle general. Find some guards and seal this room. If these people are unable to alleviate the young prince's lust poison, then let all the women in the back residence in. This. How could the battle general not understand Dr. Lu's meaning? Kuang is still young, can he withstand this kind of consumption? The medicine I sprinkled around, other than lust poison, I also used the ingredients of the elemental chi pill to grind out the water. Just a drop of it and he will quickly recover his strength. Dr. Lu waved his hand. Young prince's innate talent is outstanding and his physical condition is different from ordinary people, there shouldn't be any problem. The battle general looked at Yuan Kuang who was lying on Fan Jianren's body in heat. He clenched his fists, carried his wife and turned to leave the room. There were more than 10 servants and maids in the room. They naturally heard Dr. Lu's words. Seeing that the battle general really left, they screamed in horror, begging the battle general to let them go. However, the door to the room was suddenly closed. A big lock was placed on the door. In the room, the screams continued. For a long time. In the alley, Yiqing Luo bandaged the woman's wound and was about to carry her back to the inn to look for Jun Qingwu. Just as she bent over, Yiqing Luo's expression suddenly turned cold. Her hand quickly grabbed Kitty Li's arm. The two of them retreated together. Swoosh! A sharp weapon streaked across from Yiqing Luo's direction as it pierced into the ground. The tip of the sharp weapon was still trembling. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she looked towards the direction where the sharp weapon came from and raised her voice. Who is it? Release Granny Boo. A woman's reprimanding voice came from afar and soon after a green lotus figure quickly flew over. The young lady swiftly stood in front of the woman as she straightened her back and stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. The girl was about 14 or 15 years old. Her skin was white and tender and she was extremely delicate and pretty. She gave off a graceful and playful vibe like a girl next door. Especially that pair of watery eyes. Her eyes were extremely clear and just by looking at her, one couldn't help but like her. Grandma Boo. Yiqing Luo glanced at the woman behind the young lady. Is this your grandmother? She's not my grandmother, but in my heart she's my grandmother. The woman's eyes grew fiercer and she took out another sharp weapon. Hey, you. How can you not know what's good for you? Sister is obviously trying to save that grandmother. You say she's your grandmother. You don't even know how to repay her kindness and still dare to be fierce to sister. Kitty Li couldn't stand Yiqing Luo being insulted by others, so she immediately rushed forward and blocked Yiqing Luo's way. Chapter 2347. Kitty Li placed her hands on her waist as she snorted coldly. Otherwise, what do you think we are going to do? Don't tell me we are going to lay our hands on an old lady? The lady's eyes widened as she stared at Yiqing Luo and Kitty Li for a while before she retracted her weapon doubtfully. You don't want to kill Grandma Boo, then you are the ones who almost caused Grandma Boo to be beaten to death by Little Prince? Kitty Li's face sunk. What nonsense are you sprouting? We didn't harm Grandma Boo. All right. Yiqing Luo felt her head swelling as she watched the two young ladies chatting away. She grabbed Kitty Li's shoulder and pulled her behind her. Following that, she rubbed Kitty Li's head and smiled at the lady in front of her. We are indeed the people whom Grandma Boo saved earlier. The lady stared at Yiqing Luo as she snorted coldly. Then she ignored Yiqing Luo and Kitty Li. She turned around and squatted down as she gently touched Grandma Boo's face. Her fingers touched Grandma Bu's face for a while before the lady heaved a sigh of relief. She turned her head over and suspiciously sized Yiqing Luo up. You, no medical skills? A little. Yiqing Luo smiled faintly. Her gaze fell onto the lady's hand. Earlier, the lady's action of touching her face was absolutely not just a simple touch. It was as though she had probed the condition of Grandma Bu's body through the skin on her face. It was easy to tell that she had just treated Granny Bu's injuries. This lady was not simple. After confirming Grandma Bu's safety, the lady's enmity towards Yiqing Luo and Kitty Li was reduced. He carried Grandma Bu up. Her petite body carried Grandma Bu, but it didn't seem to use much strength. Let's go to Grandma Bu's house first. The lady left a sentence and walked forward. Yiqing Luo paused for a moment before following up. Kitty Li puffed her cheeks as she put on an unhappy look. Sister, let's go look for Sister Wu. Upon mentioning Junqing Wu, Yiqing Luo was stunned as she rubbed Kitty Li's head. Go to the inn and tell little Qing Wu that I will be back in a while. Sister. Kitty Li's bright eyes widened as she pouted and whined. Kitty Li, sister, go with me. Kitty Li will not rush you back to the inn. Sister will not leave Kitty Li. Li will not rush you to go back to the inn. Yiqing Luo was tickled by Kitty Li's adorable look. If we don't head to the inn after some time, little Qing Wu will be worried. By then when she comes out to look for us but can't find us, what should we do? Li's. Yuqing Li's face Qing Li's and said Qing Ling Li. However, there was still no news from her and Kitty Li. With Junqing Wu's temperament, June to June. Junqing Li Qing. Qing Ling. Wu. Li. Kitty Li said that her baby was not happy, and that she needed her big sister to kiss, hug and lift her up to be obedient. Li. Qing King. She stretched out her hand and hugged Kitty Li, patting her lightly. Quickly go and find Xiao Qinggu, I will go back later. Kitty swords Li's Li wagging its little tail upon hearing Yiqing Luo's words. It eagerly left the alley. Yiqing Luo immediately followed the lady's footsteps. Maybe she knew that Yiqing Luo had offended Yuan Kuang and couldn't walk on the main road. The lady led the way, which was a winding path. Not long later they stopped in front of a dilapidated wooden house. The lady pushed the door and walked in. Chapter 2348. The wooden house wasn't spacious. The furnishings were neat and tidy. Yiqing Luo's vision was fixed on the wall in the middle of the wooden house, on which hung two black and white portraits. On the portrait there was a young man and a young lady. In front of the portrait, there was a black wooden table with an incense burner. These two people are Grandma Bu's grandson and granddaughter. The lady placed Grandma Bu on the bed. Her voice was extremely gentle. She glanced sideways, looking at the two people in the portrait. The light in her eyes gradually became empty, as though she had recalled the past. They are very kind to an outsider like me. They take good care of me. I really like the atmosphere in Grandma Bu's house. The lady's eyes were blurred, with a faint smile on her lips. He could tell she really liked this family very much. But looking at the color of the two portraits, and the wooden table and incense burner in front of the portrait, Yiqing Luo roughly guessed something. Sure enough, the lady took a deep breath, half squatted by the bed and held Grandma Bu's hand. They have already left Grandma Bu for 3 years. Because of Yuan Kuang? Yiqing Luo recalled that not long ago, Grandma Bu had pleaded for her. Her heart suddenly tightened slightly. The lady was stunned, her eyes widened, puzzled. How do you know? Because in front of Yuan Kuang, I could tell that she was sincere in saving me and my sister. Yiqing Luo closed her eyes. She must have seen me and thought of her granddaughter and grandson, and couldn't bear for us to die in Yuan Kuang's hands. Yes, Grandma Bu has always been a kind person. The lady's brows were filled with gentleness. I've heard about the situation at that time. Grandma Bu must have wanted to use her own life in exchange for yours and your sister's. Yiqing Luo kept silent. There was really such a good person in this world. They obviously didn't know each other. But at the critical moment she resolutely chose to protect her. Luckily none of you were injured and that steward fan also got what he deserved. The lady's voice suddenly became more ruthless. She raised her head, her eyes were filled with coldness. That kind of person can't be allowed to die so easily. Just like that, abolish his rights as a human. Turn him into a cripple and let others trample on him. Hearing the lady's indignant voice, Yiqing Luo's lips twitched slightly. She would cripple Steward Fan. It was also because of this. That kind of person, how many heartless things had he done by Yuan Kuang's side? How many innocent people's blood had his hands been stained with? For General Steward Fan, death was a release. How could she let Steward Fan die so easily? Crippling him was just the beginning. Grandma Bu's grandson and granddaughter were tortured to death by Chief Steward Fan. The woman's voice was filled with hatred. She clenched her fists, her fingers slightly trembling. I want to take revenge for Brother Bu and Sister Bu, but Grandma Bu won't let me. She doesn't want me to offend the Yuan family because of her. Yiqing Luo's eyes trembled slightly. She suddenly regretted that she had gone too easy on Steward Fan just now. That's right. The lady suddenly raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo, opening her mouth to call out her name, but was stunned momentarily. What's your name? Yiqing Luo was just about to say her name, but on second thoughts her name was too resounding in Nirvana realm because of the battle in West Continent. Pausing, she said, Yi Luo. Chapter 2349. Miao Yi released Grandma Bu's hand and walked towards Yiqing Luo as she spoke with a grave expression. Miss Yi, General Battle King is not someone to be trifled with. Today you've crippled Steward Fan and injured Little Prince. General Battle King will absolutely not let this matter rest. She frowned. What are you going to do? No problem. Yiqing Luo shook her head lightly. She came to the Northern Wave continent just to find the Miaogu clan. The only thing that offended the Yuan family was his face. She waited until she found the Miaogu aristocratic clan and asked them to suppress the gu poison for Zhan. She immediately left the Northern Wave continent. No matter what Yuan Kuang did, he couldn't pin the blame on her. Of course, she could totally change her face. Yiqing Luo expressed. With the disguise technique in hand, the world is mine. You're from another continent, so you don't know what kind of status General Warlord has in the Northern Wave continent. If General Warlord wants to interfere in this matter, you won't be able to escape even if you grow wings. Miao Yi sat down heavily on a chair at the side and rested her chin on her hands. Her watery eyes flickered. Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's extremely adorable dazed look as she shook her head helplessly. This girl's mood swings really quickly. Sometimes it was the wind and sometimes it was the rain. His thoughts were too jumpy. But this kind of young lady, their days would be easy and happy. Suddenly Miao Yi slammed the table and stood up. Why don't you hide at my place for a while? My place is very safe, no one can find me. Yiqing Luo expressed that she really didn't want to hide. Miao Yi had already passionately leaned over to Yiqing Luo's side. No matter, don't stand on ceremony. By crippling Chief Steward Fan, you've avenged Brother Bu and Sister Bu. You can be considered my benefactor. Yiqing Luo was just about to reject. However, he heard a rough knock on the door. Yiqing Luo's ears twitched. There were about 20 people outside the door. Moreover, all of them were profounders. Miao Yi had already started walking towards the door. She said unhappily, Who is it? Can you be quieter when you knock on the door? If I break it, do you guys know how to fix it? Yiqing Luo's expression sunk slightly, and at the instant when Miao Yi opened the wooden door, her figure flashed and she rolled out from the opened window at the corner of the wooden house. Miao Yi opened the wooden door. Neatly dressed guards stood in rows at the entrance, holding 2 scrolls in their hands. As soon as the door opened, the 2 guards barged into the wooden house. Miao Yi's expression changed and she suddenly stood in front of the 2 guards. They were obviously the guards of the Battle King's mansion. Were they here to capture Yi Luo? Move. A guard impatiently grabbed Miao Yi's shoulder and tried to push her away. What are you guys trying to do? Are you trying to force your way into a private residence? Miao Yi staggered a few steps from the shove and wanted to pounce on the 2 guards again. When he turned around, he discovered that aside from Grandma Bu, who was lying on the bed, there was no one else in the room. Her heart, which had been hanging in the air, sank. Fortunately, Yi Luo was not around. After confirming that Yi Luo was not in the wooden hut, Miao Yi regained her confidence. Chapter 2350. Miao Yi's words had successfully awed those 2 guards. Their expressions changed slightly. Little girl, don't talk nonsense over there. Miao Yi sneered. Looking at your stance, isn't this trespassing? How am I spouting nonsense? I'm telling you. My grandmother is bedridden and if you disturb her, it might cause her to suffer a shock. If anything happens to her, this concerns the lives of the commoners. I wonder how everyone will spread this news. The guards were rendered speechless by Miao Yi's eloquence. General Battle King cherished his own wings, and this was something that everyone in the Battle King's residence knew. After all, General Battle King was the #1 Battle King in the Northern Continent. His battle achievements were extremely illustrious and his reputation was well known. In this way, the royal family revered General Battle King but were suspicious of him. They were afraid that Battle King would harbor ill intentions and attempt to rebel. Because of this, General Battle King was unwilling to let his bad reputation spread. As for Yuan Kuang, his character could be said to be created by General Battle King on purpose. After all, Yuan Kuang was still young and he was a rare talent. So Yuan Kuang's tyrannical behavior was pardonable. But General Battle King only limited Yuan Kuang's tyrannical behavior to Qingyue City. Moreover, Yuan Kuang only did things like abducting women, killing people and robbing things. These things were seen by the royal family and they actually enjoyed it. With Yuan Kuang's interference, the royal family would more or less let down their guard towards the Battle King's residence. But the matter of them trespassing and oppressing the commoners was spread to the other continents. General Battle King would absolutely tear these guards apart. Miao Yi raised her brows and scoffed. Say it quickly, don't disturb my grandmother's rest. The guards opened the scroll in their hands and spoke with a gloomy expression. This is Little Duke's favored concubine, do you know her? After the scroll was opened, wasn't it Yi Qing Luo who was drawn on it? Miao Yi's lips twitched as she looked like she wanted to vomit. Favored concubine? Based on Yuan Kuang's prestige, he wanted Yi Luo to be his favored concubine? Seeing the disgusted look on Miao Yi's face, the guards' faces darkened even more. I'm asking you a question. Do you know him or not? Miao Yi dug her ears. I don't know. Can you go now? You don't know him? The guard swept a cold glance at Miao Yi and stared suspiciously at her. You saw the expression of the person in the painting just now. It's not like you don't recognize him, the other guard sneered. Little girl, you should know the consequences of deceiving the Battle King's mansion. I didn't know her from the start. Miao Yi took a few steps back, her little face filled with irritation. What expression do I see in the painting? I'm just thinking that if you can be a beloved concubine with your looks, then I can be a legal concubine. This reason. The guards stared at Miao Yi for a long time. Alright, there was nothing wrong with it. This little girl was indeed more beautiful than the girl in the painting. At this moment, an elderly guard walked in from outside the door. You still haven't asked clearly? Why are you so slow? The two guards hurriedly cupped their fists and bowed. Chapter 2351. Yes. Two guards immediately walked to the bed. Stop. Miao Yi glared at the old guard, rushed to the bed and stopped him with open arms. My grandma is sick, how could she run to the street to plead for someone? Don't tell me you can't find her, so you want to capture her? The guards thought that their actions might affect the reputation of the warlord's mansion. Immediately, the hand that was about to grab the old woman stopped. The old guard's face darkened. Little girl, don't delay the warlord's mansion. You are using the warlord's mansion to bully us commoners. Alright, you can take my bedridden grandmother away. I want to see if your war king's mansion can cover the sky with one hand. Miao Yi got out of the way and took out a ball-shaped object from her pocket. Come, take my grandma away, kill me. Let's see if you are faster or if I spread the news faster. You. The old guard didn't expect this girl to be so courageous, he couldn't even scare her. Instead they were shocked. This is the signal flare of the 3000 peach blossom. Do you know where they are? Miao Yi smiled slyly. The old guard's face darkened. The 3000 peach blossom was a small mercenary group. In this mercenary group there were only women. But this small mercenary group was spread all over the Nirvana realm. They collected all the secrets in the Nirvana realm that people didn't know. It was a place where information was traded. Unexpectedly, this young girl was related to the 3000 peach blossom. If this signal flare was really fired, what happened today would be spread by the 3000 peach blossom. The reputation of the warlord general. It would definitely be tarnished. The old guard secretly clenched his teeth. You said your grandma is sick, let me take a look. Miao Yi tightened her grip on the signal flare. Look. The old guard walked forward, the woman lying on the bed, her face pale, her head wrapped in gauze. Still oozing blood, she was so weak that she could barely breathe. The old guard looked at the woman's forehead suspiciously. Miao Yi nervously tightened her grip on the signal flare, pretending to be calm. My grandma accidentally hit. Captain. The team ahead found the young prince's concubine. Suddenly a guard outside the door spoke. The older guard's expression froze. Let's go. Go after them. The wooden house regained its original tranquility. Miao Yi heaved a sigh of relief and went forward to tuck Grandma Bu in. He walked to the door and peeked inside. Groups of guards swarmed forward to chase after them. She furrowed her brows and looked back at Granny Bu. After pondering for a moment, Zhou Xian prepared to leave the room. Suddenly someone patted his back. Where are you going? Miao Yi shrieked in fright and turned around abruptly. Seeing that familiar face so close to her, she smiled happily and said, Yi Luo. Pa, why are you here? Where were you hiding just now? Close the door properly. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a smile as she turned around and returned to the wooden house. Miao Yi quickly closed the door. I thought, you were discovered by those people. So you want to find me? Aren't you afraid that the Battle King's men will think that you and I are in cahoots? Yiqing Luo looked at Miao Yi's cautious look as she couldn't help but laugh out.